Hi everyone, we have about 2 minutes to go until top of the hour. Thanks for everybody that's already connected to the webinar. We're just going to give it another 2 minutes or so just to get everybody settled in, and then I'll speak to you on top of the hour. Got 1 minute to go. Hopefully you got your pizza, beers and burgers ready for this session here at lunchtime. So get settled in, crack open that beer, and then we'll get started in about a minute or so. Okay, I think I'm going to get started here this afternoon on this Friday. Hi guys, if it's the first time that you've joined our Friday Changemaker sessions, I'm Lenny here with Element 8. And the Friday Changemaker sessions is really just about giving a little bit more technical insight in the product stack that we offer here at Element 8. Obviously that includes the Ignition SCADA platform, the Canary Labs Historian, especially for manufacturing data, and then also Flow, the information platform. And today we are going to talk a little bit about the Canary Historian. We do this Changemaker sessions every second Friday. We do a little bit of a video on one of the topics that we've decided on. If you guys have any ideas for topics or any technical things that you want me to do on any one of these products that we can cover in one of these Friday sessions, please let me know and give a shout out to me. leonard.smith@element8.co.za. Well, today we're going to focus a little bit on the Canary Historian. It's session 8 already. Can't believe it's 16 weeks of doing these sessions already. And what we're going to do today is we're going to focus a little bit more on how do I just get data into the Canary Historian. And I'm going to use open standard protocols. I'm going to utilize OPCUA, OPCDA, and then also the MQTT protocol as ways that I can get actually data start logging into our system. Now, if you guys joined me for my last Canary session that I've done, it was all about how do I migrate historical data that maybe sits in a database or another type of historian solution into the Canary Historian. And we utilize the web API for that. Today it's going to be a little bit more configuration than coding, so we're going to use the standard tools that Canary provides to get the data into the Canary Historian. Now the Canary Historian has a very simple 3-step process of actually get it up and get it commissioned. And as simple as it is, the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually collect and store data into the Historian. That's what we're going to focus on today, is actually just step number 1 of how do I get data into my Canary Historian. And then later through the sessions, I will then a little bit more focus on step number 2, how I can assign different context to the data by utilizing calculations and utilizing views. Very powerful feature that they do have, the views. And then lastly, step number 3 is to maximize your operation by actually analyzing the data. And they've got brilliant client tools with Axiom that we can use to build our own dashboard and trending capability. But for today, we're just going to focus on step number 1, how to actually get the data into the Canary historian. Now, the Canary historian has what we call a whole bunch of collectors. Now, the collector is pretty much what it says. It's going to connect to a source, and it's going to collect the data out of that source and start pushing it forward to the Canary historian solution. Now, out of the box, they do have a whole bunch of standard collectors available. They have a collector for MQTT via SparkB. They also have a collector available for OPCUA and OPCDA. We can connect to SCADA systems. We can get data out of a SQL database. We can load CSV files into the Canary historian. And then, as I showed last time on the last webinar, we can also use the web and .NET APIs if you want to go and create potentially our own collector and start pushing in data into the Canary historian. But for today, we're going to focus more on the standard collectors that comes with the Canary historian. Now, how does this setup work with the collector and actually pushing data into the Canary historian? Well, let's imagine you have some kind of an OPC server or MQTT broker, and we want to go and connect to that OPC server to actually get the data that's getting generated by our PLCs or equipment on our plant floors. Well, what we will do is we will try and install the Canary collector as close as possible to the source of the data. Now, we like to do that actually on the OPC server. If we utilize OPCDA, that will obviously eliminate DCOM issues for us over the network, so it will make the connection and setup very easy. But not to say that we can't do that over the network. So if you do have a separate little collector box and you need to do that, you can either use OPCDA or UA, and you can connect over the network. But as an architecture perspective, we would really like to have the Canary collector as close as possible to the data that we have. Now, the collector will connect to the OPC server or the MQTT broker. It will collect the data, and it will actually send it off with what we call the sender service. Now, the sender service is what's going to go and try and push this data to the receiving end of the historian. Now, these collectors and sender servers, obviously from an architectural perspective, can run on its own node. It can run on the OPC server and not necessarily on the actual server where the Canary historian component is installed. And that's why they went for the server sender kind of architecture, where the sender service will now push that data off to what we call a receiver service. And that receiver service will then go and push the data into the Canary historian. Now, why, you might have asked, that they went for this architecture? Well, it's plain simple. Because we need to be able to connect and detect network failures, right? So if this link goes down between our OPC server, or where we actually installed the collector and the sender service, we need to be able to detect that that link went down, and we need to be able to cache the data locally. So we need to go into this, what we call a store forward mode. So we need to do that. The sender service will go into what we call store forward. It will actually start caching the data locally to the box. It will also then send out an email to the administrator of your Canary system that, hey, there was a network break or something went wrong, and I am now in store forward mode. Now, obviously, as we fix the problem or the network issue and the network gets back again, then obviously the data that's been cached locally by that sender service, you'll notice it's got like a buffer, where it will tell you how big that buffer is with data that it cached locally. It will actually push that off to the receiver service, and you'll notice that your buffer will start decreasing and will automatically backfill the data. And obviously we have almost no data loss in this scenario. What this kind of technology also provides us is a big architectural freedom scenario. So we can have it in a plain simple scenario like this, where we've got one sender service pushing to, or one receiver into the Canary historian, but we can also have one sender service potentially pushing to 2 Canary historians. So think about it. If you've got a site solution where you have a site historian, but people in head office might have their own enterprise historian, and you need to push to both, that sender service can definitely push to both historians. Now, from a redundancy perspective, we can even extend this architecture more by putting down another Canary logger, and that Canary logger or collector can go and connect to another OPC server, and the sender service will go and be able to push to the same receiver as your previous one, and might even be the same tags, right? So you can build in a redundant sender server solution. Now, how does it work? You might ask, if you've got the same tag pushing from 2 sender servers. Well, it works on a very simple first timestamp in is the value that the Canary historian will then store inside of the historian. Right, so this gives you a lot of architectural freedom, and you can go and plonk down as many of these Canary collectors as you want, depending on what you need to achieve with your architecture. Cool. What we're going to focus on today, though, is just a little bit on the collectors themselves, and we're going to focus on MQTT, how to utilize MQTT to get that in, as well as our OPC technologies to get those data into my Canary historian. Alright, so I'm going to switch over to my virtual machine now, where I've got Canary installed, and we're going to go and configure a few of these collectors to start pushing data into my Canary historian. Okay. Alright, so there's my virtual machine. I've already got Canary installed, so I'm going to open up what we call the Canary admin tool. That is the tool that I use to configure my Canary historian. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger here. And you'll notice all the kind of different tiles that I've got depending on what components I've got installed on this Canary or historian. Alright, so the first thing that I need to do before I can start collecting data and pushing it in, I probably just need to tell the historian where do I want to go and store it in. So the Canary historian has this concept of data sets, and you can break down these data sets potentially per plant area or functional location, and you can go and start recording data into these different data sets inside of the historian. So think about a data set as a little database, a separate little database in this Canary historian where I can start pushing data. So I can go and create multiple of these little databases inside of my Canary historian. As always, the Canary historian is a NoSQL database, so I don't have to be a SQL administrator or a boffin with SQL to actually start creating these databases. And that's one of the big plus points of the Canary historian, is that I do not need to do that. It manages these databases for me internally. Alright, so currently I don't have any data sets. You'll see my tiles here are pretty empty. I'm going to go to the configuration section here, and I'm going to go and create a new data set. Alright, I'm going to call it my Friday Changemaker session, and with this one I'm going to push in OPCUA data. Alright, so that is the name of my one data set. I'm going to go and create that. I'm going to create another one, Friday Changemaker session, OPC, guess what? OPCUA. Well, cool. And I'm also going to create a new one, my Friday Changemaker session, and this will be my MQTT data that I'll be pushing. I'm just creating these data sets per the technologies that I'm going to use to push it in, but obviously from a more practical perspective, you'll probably do this by your plot locations or hierarchy of different sites that you have to go and isolate the data per site or per hierarchy. And don't worry, from a front-end perspective, you will be able to see all of these data from all of these different data sets into one single trend if you need to do that. Alright, so there I've got my 3 data sets, and I'll go look at my databases here. There they are now, but currently you'll notice that there's obviously no data getting pushed into these data sets at this point in time. Alright, so let's go back to basics. I think something that we've used all in the past, it's one of the older technologies that we can use, and that's obviously OPCUA. Interesting enough that about 85% of all Canary historian installations still utilizes OPCUA to get that in, so it's still a very relevant technology inside of our automation space. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that to get OPCUA data into my historian. Right, now if I look at my tiles in my home section here, you'll see I've got an OPC collector here. Now this OPC collector is actually to collect and connect to OPCUA data. So there's a little separate tool that I'm going to utilize to actually connect to a DA source, and it is called the Canary Administrator Logger. I'm just going to minimize this for 1 second here. You'll notice here that I've got a little thing pinned to my taskbar, and this is the actual Canary Administrator Logger tool. So this will allow me to connect to an OPCUA source and push that data into one of my data sets that I've created inside my Canary historian. Notice that I've already got a little file here. What you have to specify. Luckily, I'm lucky. I've got everything installed on a one-box node solution, so I can leave the historian computer kind of blank, or could have added localhost, but you would have probably typed in your historian name, location, actual name of that historian box into this component here. Alright, so I've got a few OPC servers installed on this box. So if I browse for my OPC servers, you'll notice that I've got the default Canary Labs simulator. So Canary Labs does have a little simulator that simulates some data that you can utilize to play with. But I also have Software Toolbox installed here, and my Software Toolbox has obviously some data that it's simulating for me that I'm going to go and connect to. So I'm going to select my Software Toolbox OPC server there, and you'll notice that I've got this big black or grayish background space here where I now need to add the tags that I would like to push. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to say browse my OPC server. It will browse the nodes inside of that top server. I've got a channel called production, and in there I've got a plant PLC, and I've got a whole bunch of tags that's starting to get simulated in Software Toolbox. I'm going to go and add all of these tags to my historian. Now, very important, I need to tell the logger to which data set do I actually want to start pushing in the data. So if we go back to my Canary admin tool and I go to my historian, I've created this OPC DA dataset. So I need to tell the logger, hey, please take these tags and push it into that dataset. And the way that we do that is providing the dataset as a prefix to the tag. Alright, so in here, and this is something I always forget to do, and I don't get tags, and then I realize, I forgot the prefix. So in here, I just need to tell it my Friday change maker session, and I want to push it to my OPC DA dataset, and you'll notice that it will actually prefix that dataset to the tag. Okay, so that's very important. Please, guys, remember to add your name prefixes to the tags. Hit apply, and it will go and add all of these tags into my list here. Currently, it's not historizing because I still need to save it and start it. But here you can see it pulled through all the descriptions, the types, the ID, and obviously you can change your name of your tags here. This ID column here is the actual column of the tag inside of the OPC server, so I'm not going to play with that. But you can change the name, you can change the description, you can add your engineering units, your scales, etc. Now, this will update every second, so my update rate of storing the tags in here is going to be every second, and that's something that we see is very common, to start storing data every second inside my store. Cool, that's perfect. All right, now something that I do get asked quite a lot is to say, this is great, I can add the tag into my historian, but I've got a tag inside of my PLC that's a state tag. It's an integer value, and depending if the piece of equipment is running or stopped or has an interlock or has a process fault, I pack all of those bits into one status word. And obviously, a lot of the time people would like to bit pick it, right? They want to say, oh, I want to historize a Boolean for my running signal, or I want to historize a Boolean for my fault indicator. So they want to take that state tag and they want to bit pick it out to see if that particular bit 1 or bit 2 in the word is true or not. Now I've got a little tag here. I'm just going to open up Software Toolbox here quickly. I've got a little tag that I've created, which I called my bitpick tag. So just to show you, there it is, bitpick. And if I look at this value in my OPC client tool, you'll notice that it changes values from 1258 to 1 to 0. So I would like to bitpick that first bit in the word. Excuse me, I promise I don't have corona. Oh, and if you guys were worried about 5G transmitting it, no, I don't have to stress about that. So, okay, cool. So I would like to bit pick this. I would like to see if bit number 1 is on or off. All right. So I've already got that tag inside of my Canary logger here. So if I scroll down into my list of tags, there's my bit pick tag. All right. Now I'm going to copy this guy, and I'm going to go and paste it. Cool. I'm going to now change the name to bitpick. This is going to be my run signal. Cool. And this is quite a very cool feature. So it's the same tag that I'm looking for in the PLC as the initial one, but Canary's got this cool feature at the end here that calls a data transform. Now I can go, and there's a lot of examples in the help files on all the different operands and conditions that you can do in the data transform. But one thing that I can do in the data transform is very simply go and do an AND operand with the bit that I actually want to see. Now I know that bit number 0, so that's the first bit in the word, that's my run signal. So if I want to know if that particular bit is on or off, what do? Well, it's the 0 bit, so I go 2 to the power of 0, which is actually 1. If you wanted to look at the second or the first bit, not the 0 bit, the first bit, then it's 2 to the power of 1, which is 2, 2 to the power of 2, which is 4 for the second bit, third bit, 2 to the power of 3, which is 8. So you just AND it with the bit in the word that you would like to see is on or off. Now, the way that we do that is we say X, which is the incoming value, and we use the AND operand. So we say X and in this case I would like to know if it's bit number 1, so I'm going to AND it with 1. So that's 2 to the power of 0, which is 1. And I can see if that bit is changing, and then obviously I can change my unit of measure here to be a bool. So that's cool. Very cool with this data transform that I can do the bit picking right here at the source of the data. Alright, I'm going to save this. Cool, it's going to just warn me that you've made changes to your file, you need to apply it. So I'm first going to just apply all my config changes here, and there we go. It's already starting to log my values. There's my bit pick. Let's have a look. It's false, it goes true, and it goes false, and depending on what the value is of that, there we go, it's true again. So that's perfect, my transform works, that's great. Okay, so this is now start logging data. You'll notice that I need to save it to a file location, so I'm just saving it into a little file on my PC. Hit the save button there, and it's saved it to my file. Alright, so this is now starting to log. So technically, if I go back to my historian, minimize this, aha, there you notice now that for my OPCUA block, I'm starting to historize values. I've already got 48 tags that I'm historizing in here. If I open this up, there's the data set for today. Open that up, here's all the tags that's getting historized with all of the values. Let's look at that bit pick. There's the bit pick, the original one. Cool. So there's the values 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then the bit pick itself, if it's a 0 or active from the OPC Boolean component. So that worked great. Alright, so I'm busy historizing data into my historian, utilizing OPCUA. Now, one thing that you will notice when I go back to the home side of Canary is that I've got a logger tile here. Now, this little exe that I've just used to configure the tags that's getting historized, if I shut down my PC and I reboot my server, or my server gets back up again, I would probably like this to start up automatically to start logging tags, right? So in this little tile here for the logger, I can go and specify to run the logger, which is this exe here, to specify to run it as a service, which I would definitely like to do. And then I can also tell it an argument. Now, you'll notice that I've saved this configuration here to a specific file, right? So if I go and say File, Save As, you'll notice that I've saved it as, they call it an LCF file, a log session file. and I've saved it here into my bin location on my C drive, right? So obviously when the server starts up, it needs to look at this configuration file to see which tags it needs to load and connect to and start historizing. So that's all that I'm telling it in the arguments here. I'm saying just give it a little bit of a delay of 30 seconds just to make sure everything is started up, and then load this file in this location, and it will automatically start to log these data points on a server reboot. So that is great. In the past you had to do this in the registry, etc. They've added it in here now to the logger tile inside of the admin tool, which is great. Alright, so that's pretty much how easy it is to do OPC CDA. Utilize the OPC logger, connect to your OPC server, and start pushing in that data points into your Canary store. Cool. Alright, now let's move over to OPC UA. Alright, so OPC UA you'll configure actually in the Canary administrator tool. So you'll notice that here's an OPC collector tile. I'll go and select that, and currently you'll see that I've got no OPC sessions active to start logging data. So I'm going to go into my configuration here. I'm going to create a new session. I can give it a nice name. So this is going to be my Friday Changemaker session, OPC UA. I'm going to connect to my local historian. Again, very importantly, I need to tell it to which data set do I want to start historizing the data, and obviously I'm going to go and select my OPC UA. Alright, now it's going to ask you your details of your OPC UA server. Now my OPC UA server is also running on this box, so I'm going to just type in localhost as the IP address, and then it's going to ask me for the actual port of the OPC UA server. Now, I'm also utilizing Software Toolbox for this. So if I right click here, you'll notice that I've got the OPC UA configuration component of Software Toolbox. If I open that up, you'll notice that I'm serving my OPC UA on two endpoints, on an IP address and onto the name of the computer. You'll notice that there's a little port there, right? 49380. So that port that this OPC UA server is served on, I need to obviously tell Canary to connect to that port. So I need to type in there 49380. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to type in 49380. Cool. And that should be it. That should be it. I'm lucky I don't have any security set up on that OPC UA server, but if you do, then obviously you need to go and configure that security there. I'm going to apply my changes quickly here, and then I'm going to go and add some tags to this session here. So I'm going to go and browse my OPC server. So click on the browse option there. You'll notice that it browsed my OPC server. Again, it's the same tag structure that you saw that's available in the OPC DA. I'm going to go to my production, go to my main plant. Here's all of those tags. Select them and hit apply and say cool, and kill this browse option there. Again, I've got the transform option here as well for the OPC UA. So if I want to do that same trick with a bitpick, I can do it with this transformation option here as well. I'm just going to go hit apply here, and that's it. So there's all the tags, all the OPC UA addresses, and I'm going to start storing this data into that OPC UA dataset. Cool. That's it. That's all I have to do. So I'm going to go back to my status here. You'll notice that it's currently not connected or not collecting data. I just have to start it with this little play button here. I'm going to hit this. It's going to take about 30 seconds. It also has a delay of around 30 seconds to start pushing into the historian. So it's going to go and connect the data. There we go, and it should start pushing the data into my historian. So you'll see it's got one session, 47 tags. So if I go to my historian here, let's go back to my databases. There we go. OPC UA is connected. It's also starting writing. Let's look at that. Here's today's data set, and here's all the tags that's starting to get historized by utilizing OPC UA. So very, very simple to do. You don't have to worry about setting it to auto. It will obviously auto start when the historian starts up and start historizing the tags that we've got. Notice on my historian, I just want to show you guys here, You'll notice that my sender service has now 2 sessions, right? One session is coming in from the OPC UA collector, and the other session is coming in from the OPC DA collector. Both of those collectors are pushing to the same sender service, okay? And you'll notice that it is currently not in a buffer or a store forward situation, right? So the buffer is empty, but it's telling you that it's storing about 75 tags per second. And if I look at my receiver here, I'll see that I've got 107 tags configured in the system. If I look at my receiver, again, it's got the 2 sessions that's getting pushed from the sender service, 107 tags, and there you can see the update rate. That it is actually how many updates it's stored so far. So already there's 26,000 records in this historian from starting this session, which is crazy. You can see it's doing about 80 tags a second at this point. This is not a lot, to be honest. The Canary historian can do 1.5 million tags in a second. So it scales very well into pushing the data into the Canary store. Cool. All right. So the last thing that we're going to play with is our MQTT connector. All right. Now you notice here that I've got a MQTT collector, and you'll also notice from my services here that I've got an MQTT collector that's running. If I go to this MQTT collector here, currently I've got a connection group configured, but it's not enabled, so I haven't enabled it as yet. Okay. Now, how do I actually tell the Canary historian to which broker do I want to connect to, and to which topic on that MQTT broker do I need to look for to get my tags? Now, Canary has implemented the Sparkplug specification of MQTT, so if I just point it to a Sparkplug topic, it will go and create these tags automatically for me. Okay. Now, obviously, I need something to push data to an MQTT broker for me. And I'm going to actually use my Ignition SCADA solution to do that. All right. So I'm going to quickly go and configure that. So I'm going to go to my Ignition gateway. So I'm just opening up my browser here. And let's go to my gateway website. All right. Just reset the trial quickly. And we should be ready to go. Perfect. All right. Now, I have installed the MQTT transmission module from ServiceLink, and you'll notice that I've configured it to connect to one of my servers. So I've got an MQTT broker running in the cloud, and you'll see that it is connected, and I can utilize that to push data to in the Sparkplug specification. You'll notice that I've got what we call a transmitter. I've created a Friday Changemaker session transmitter, and whenever I put anything in my FCS tag path in Ignition, it will start pushing all of those tags to my broker, and it's going to utilize a specific topic name, Friday Changemaker session 007 number 1. Shane, oh good, I hope Sean Canary is okay there. Alright, so push it out on this particular topic. Okay, so, but first I need to go and add tags to this particular tag path to obviously start pushing that. So let's open up the Ignition Designer. So I'm going to open up my designer here. I've got a Friday Changemaker session designer launcher configured. And I'm going to open up my MQTT or my IoT project that I've got created here. Alright, let's just log in quickly. Alright, and here's my IoT demo, and let's open it up. Okay, now, while that's loading, as soon as I create this tag path in the transmitter on the MQTT transmitter module, it will actually create a folder in my project called FCS. Alright, so you'll notice when I launch my project here and I go to my tag browser, I will see a little folder called FCS in my designer. So let's have a look at that. Here's my tag browser, and truth, there it is. I've got the FCS folder structure there. This is 8.1. I love the way that they've restructured the tag browser here. It makes it much more simpler and easier to go through your different tag providers. So there's my MQTT transmission info. Just going to tell me if I need a refresh, and I can go and push that refresh value here active as well. Cool. So let's go back to my tags. There's my FCS tag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and browse some OPC tags that I've got here. I've got a dairy simulator running here. Let's go into the refrigeration, and let's just push the discharge temperature, the pressure, and the temperature and the humidity. Let's push those tags via MQTT. Alright, so all I have to do is I take these tags and I drag it into the FCS folder, right? I take these tags, drag it into the FCS folder. There you can see they're busy updating. And now my MQTT transmission will tell me, hey, I've got a refresh that's required because I've added new tags that it needs to push. Cool. Now I've got just a little MQTT Explorer here. I'm going to connect to this MQTT broker that I've got. So I'm going to connect to it, and you'll notice that I've already got some topics pushing onto the Sparkplug B specification. So there is some data getting pushed in there, but you'll notice none of this is for my Friday Changemaker session topic, right? So there's some data getting pushed there, but let's see when I enable my transmitter here if it will actually go and push into it. So I'm going to go and give this a refresh. Cool, and there we go. FCS, which is the group name. So it is going to birth all of this new topics. So there's 007, there's all of the tags that it's going to birth, and then it's going to start pushing all of my data. There's my ambient temperature, ambient humidity. Cool, so it's starting pushing these topics to my broker. Flow is also pushing some data. Flow also has a Sparkplug B enabled consumer, so Flow is also pushing it. Alright, so there's some flow data that's getting pushed into my MQTT. Now I only want to historize the FCS topic, okay, because that's where the data sits that I want in the Canary story. Alright, so let's go back to Canary. You'll notice that there's no really configuration settings on the MQTT collector inside of the admin. There's a little database where we do go and configure these things. Alright, so I'm going to go to my file explorer here. I'm going to go to the C drive. I'm going to go to my program data location. Oops, if I can spell. Alright, so inside of program data, you'll notice that there is a Canary Labs folder. If I open it up, there's a logger folder in there, and if I open it up, there's a store and forward folder, and there I've got the settings for my MQTT collector. If I open that up, there's a little SQLite file that's got all the configuration that I need to go and configure for my OPC server. So I'm going to open this up into my SQLite browser, and you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of, no, I don't want to download the new version. Cool. So there's a whole bunch of tables in this little database that I need to go and configure. So I'm just going to browse the data here. So the first thing that you need to go and configure is what we call a server group. The server group is literally where you tell it, which OPC server do you want to connect, MQTT broker you want to connect to, and you can give it a little bit of a client name. Then you go and configure the actual service itself. So to which server do you want to go and connect? What is your refresh rate or reconnection rate? And that is the actual IP address and port for your MQTT broker. Then you go and configure what we call the subscriptions. To which historian do I want to push this data? Well, obviously I'm going to push it to my localhost historian. And it will automatically go and generate the historian tags for me. Okay. So it will go and do that as well. Cool. Alright. Then what I need to do is I also need to go, this will be all my tags that it will automatically build in that it gets from my MQTT broker. So I don't have to do anything there. It will do that automatically. But here I can go and say to which topic do I want to subscribe. Okay, now I don't want to go and subscribe to this topic because that is a wildcard character to go and subscribe to everything, right? I want to only go and subscribe to my FCS topic. So you notice that it's the sparklogly/FCS. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to go and say FCS and then everything in the FCS topic path I would like to go and connect. Alright, so I would like to do that. And then I don't have a data set called element 8, right? I created a data set in my historian that is called the Friday Changemaker session MQTT. So I need to tell it to go and push to that data set. Okay. Alright. Now I just need to remember I need to write my changes to these files. Cool. And there I go. I've made the changes to go and look for that particular topic and then send it to that particular data sets. Now I can close this. I'm just going to open it up and make sure it is a live demo after all, that this is got the right. Yeah, there we go. So it saved it, it committed it, and it's got those configuration options there. Cool. Alright, so I'm done with my configuration of my MQTT broker settings. I should then be able just to enable this MQTT collector, and it should connect then to the broker. It should see that topic and it should start historizing the tags automatically for me. So let's hit enable there. There we go. It's connected, it's subscribing, it's logging my tags already. It's starting updating my tags. Let's go back to the historian. Let's go back to my data sets. Alright, so I should see some data in my MQTT topic here. Alright, do you see? We can see tags are getting started to write into my MQTT dataset. If I go and open that up, there's today's file, and there is my tags getting started to push by my MQTT broker utilizing the sparklogly. I didn't have to create these tags. Part of the sparklogly specification is something that we call a birth. So there you see it said I'm going to birth this device. Here's all the setup required for me to actually go and create this tag automatically. So Canary will create these tags automatically based on the birth, and then after the birth has been done, then it starts pushing the actual data itself, and then Canary will use that data to start pushing whatever the data points is for these different tags. So it will do it automatically. Another great thing about MQTT that it does what we call report on exception. So it will only send data when the data has actually changed, so on Delta. So that means that you've got a lot less bandwidth that you utilize. So MQTT is a great protocol for those remote assets or stranded assets. Not just for that, but it's one of the benefits for remote or stranded assets, getting that data into your Canary store. And that's how simple it is. So in just a little less than 30 minutes, I was able to connect to OPC, DA, as well as MQTT, and to start getting that data into my Canary historian. And obviously, all of that data is now available for me to utilize in my Axiom, my front end of the Canary tool. So if I go to my Axiom front end, which is localhost on port 83, I would be able to add a new trend here, and I would be able to add any one of my tags in my 3 historian data sets. So there we go, there's my MQTT data, my OPCDA data, and my OPCUA data. So I can add that one from there, I can add this guy from that one, and I can maybe add some stuff from my MQTT data. And there we go. There's the data starting to get historized in my historian, and I can immediately start using that in my front end and trend tools. Guys, I hope that was valuable for you, seeing how we can get data into my Canary historian utilizing these 3 collectors that comes with the historian. And I hope that was insightful, and I would like you guys to go and play. Get a broker, MQTT broker, get it set up, push some data with the SparkPlug protocol, and see how cool and easy it is when it automatically goes and birth and see that data. Alright guys, that's it for today's session. Please, if you've got any other topics, please let us know that you would like to see on these sessions. And look out in another 2 weeks. I'm going to go and do a flow session next, where we're going to look a little bit on how can I use projections and flow to predict where you're going from a production perspective. So almost like a cricket run rate to kind of predict where you're going to end off in the end of the day from your production reporting. Guys, enjoy the rest of your Friday. See you in 2 weeks. Cheers. Bye.